going to ask for the recording to be activated. Thank you very much, Joe. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask Isabel to kickstart the presentation. Thanks, Isabel, for being here tonight. And I think Omar is on his way. He won't be long before he joins us.
Thanks a lot, Clara, and thanks a lot, Yara. Hi, everyone. Really, really nice to meet you all. I'm Isabel, as Clara told. I'm a campaigner at Insure Our Future. It is a campaign that aims to get the insurance company and industry to stop insuring and investing in fossil fuels and invest rather in solutions and transition out of this industry towards renewables. And also co-lead of the StopEACOP stream of insurance of the StopEACOP coalition. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to share my screen with a little presentation. And also wanting to mention that I'm based in France, campaigning from France, and English is my second language. So I hope my accent is easy to understand. I'll try to talk slowly. And if ever I'm difficult to understand, please, anyone who's in the facilitation team, let me know and I'll adjust. I'll be more than happy to do so. So I will share now my screen in a second. Up. Maybe to sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, Joe. I think I don't have the option to share my screen. Is that possible? I don't see it anymore.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. It works now. Sorry. Okay. So everyone should see my screen now. Is that the case? Can you give me a thumbs up, please? Okay, perfect. Great. Sorry for the wait. So yeah, basically we're going to be spending some time presenting a bit what's EACOP, the project, where it's at, and how is the fight going, and what you can do from the UK. So basically, EACOP is the East Africa crude oil pipeline. It's a project that's being developed by fossil fuel companies Total and Chinook, and also the part of the government from Uganda and Tanzania, the two countries where the project is being developed. Total, as you know, is a French fossil fuel company. And we're going to be presenting how you can get involved from the UK and why it's a really key fight, not only in these countries, but internationally. So here you have on the left side images of the pipeline, and then on the right side images of one of the national parks in Uganda, next to which the project would cross if it moves forward. So here on this map, you have the map of the two countries where the pipeline would go if it was constructed. So basically, it's a massive fossil fuel project. It would be starting in Uganda, where the pipeline would basically enable forage drilling oiled fields, more than 400 oil drilling fields close to Lake Albert and the Murchison National Park that you see on top of the screen, on top to the left. Basically, why the EACOP fight is really key is if there's not a pipeline that can transport the oil, these drilling fields won't be created, or there would need to be another project of a pipeline to be able to transport it, because the vast majority of the oil will be shipped in boats to be sent for external consumption by countries abroad. So it won't be for local consumption, or very little. And basically, it would be, if it happens, the longest heated oil pipeline in the world, because of the type of oil that it is, and a non-refined oil. The oil needs to be constantly heated at 50 degrees to be able to go through the pipeline. So it needs a lot of energy as well to be able to just keep it at this heat and transport it. There would be also, if you see the line of the pipeline, which is the black line, it would be next to very sensible types of ecosystems. So you see Lake Albert, you see also Lake Victoria, which are like very key and important water resources in Uganda and Tanzania, and also in the Republic of Congo, so in Kenya. So there's like many different countries that are really dependent of these very important bodies of water. And basically the oil drilling is very close to Lake Albert, and the pipeline would cross just next. It wouldn't cross Lake Victoria, but it would just pass near and very close. And basically, you know, there's documentation on the risk of having oil spills and any problematic happening from the extraction of oil, and the dangers of oil going into waterways, going into the soil, we're going into key ecosystems. And these two lakes and also the riverways that pass through the line, the passage of the pipeline would, if a spill would happen, it would impact potentially over 40 million people that live in these regions. So it's like very key and important waterways that are dependent for, like, you know, drinkable water, for the farming, for the cattle, for like any, you know, very key use of waters. And also this pipeline, if it would move forward, would be also like a very important source of water, of carbon emissions. So basically would generate up to 34 million tons of carbon emissions each year, which is more than double the current emissions of Uganda and Tanzania combined. So it's really a very, very big carbon emission project. It's within the carbon bombs types of projects. And normally when a project of pipeline moves forward, it doesn't, you know, exist for only a couple of years. Normally it's a couple of decades. For other types of pipelines, we've seen that, you know, it's around 30, 40, 50 years that it's in use. So it'd definitely be a major project to just develop Uganda as an oil dependent economy and country, which isn't at the moment. And also it not only will just pass through you know, these waterways, it will also force the displacements of more than 100,000 people, because it passes through a lot of different farms, a lot of different villages, a lot of different places where people are mostly dependent on farming, dependent on fishing or raising cattle. So basically, there's been already some displacements of some of these families and some of these people even before the project has started. And at the moment, there hasn't been proper compensation by the company for the relocation of these people to have like another home, to have another income. So there's many different violations of rights that are being done already, even before the project has officially started. And I'll just pass it to the next slide. What you see here is some images of Murchison Falls, which is you know, when you saw through the map on the other slides, top to the left, one of the most important national parks of the region, and even of some of the countries in Africa. It's a huge, it's a place that has a huge diversity of different species and a very like rich ecosystem that's very unique and that employs a lot of people in the ecotourism industry as well, and has a lot of endangered species. So this park specifically is one of the homes of the largest populations of elephants, giraffe, lions, leopards, chimpanzees. There's so many different other animals in addition to these ones that a lot of them are quite endangered as well, species. And it's been decades of really hard work for the local communities to be able to protect these spaces, to be able to fight against poaching and the dissemination of different types of species in the ecosystem. And it's also definitely a major source of local sustainable jobs. And if the pipeline would go through, it would create new roads and routes that would go across the country, but also close to the park and through the park. So recoming, you know, the possibility of having more poaching and different problematics that's come with the fact of having, you know, places where there's much more construction and just reopening this door that had been fought against for decades. Also, since the project has been proposed, and there's been also on the oil drilling parts more advanced in the project rather than the EACOP pipeline. There's already been multiple different types of human rights violations, and also StopEACOP coalition members and communities that are impacted directly by the project have come to the United Nations and to UN human rights rapporteurs 4 times to present the different human rights violations that are in place, without any response from the Ugandan, French, and governments, and neither the companies. So the different rights that are already violated and that will just increase as the project moves forward. Just saying a couple of them: the right to having a property for the people who are displaced without compensation, the right to adequate and standard living, right to food, right to education, right to health, right to water, also right to freedom of expression and assembly, because there's been some arrests, threats, intimidation, attacks, and even imprisonments against environmentalists, human rights journalists, groups that have been vocally denouncing the risks of the projects, and also putting forward the solutions that are alternative solutions for this project to happen, because there's also all these parts of the campaign, which are the documentation of how there could be a development of the economy of the country to pull out the country and its population out of poverty, but not making the country stuck into an oil economy, but go through another process of having an economy that's more diversified, that's more sustainable. There's tons of opportunities on renewables in this country, this region, that needs massive investment that haven't been receiving investment for years. There's also sustainable job in ecotourism and so many different others that Omar will be able to touch on a bit more. So I'll just stop here a second just to see if Omar has joined us before we move forward.
Unfortunately, yet. I know he was traveling on it. He hasn't joined at the moment. Okay, sounds great. So I'll continue, but Clara, please let me know when Omar joins, and I'll pass the mic to him when he arrives. Great. So here I kind of wanted to present to you where the project is at. So it's a project that's been delayed quite a while, quite a bit since the beginning of its proposition. So basically, the project has been delayed for over 5 years. Now, where we're at is there's been the final investment decision that's been proposed. There's been some permits that have been approved. However, the companies haven't been able to find the necessary funding for the project to move forward. They haven't been able to find any credit export guarantees. They haven't been able to find any insurance for the project to move forward. And that's mainly because of the very important efforts from the local communities and also from the vast variety of groups that are involved in the StopEACOP coalition to raise the risk, to do the environmental assessments, the risk and human rights impact assessments of the projects, to present also how the process and even the project is violating different key elements for a project to this type to move forward. There's also, and I'll present it a bit later, different investigations, different court cases that have been put forward that have delayed the project. So basically, it was supposed to have its first oil extracted and transported in 2020. But now where we're at is that the final investment decision that you see on the first graphic on top, which is kind of the key elements for the project and its construction to move forward, which was supposed to happen in 2017, has only been announced by Total and by the government and the companies in February of this year, so February 2022. And basically, when you see on the second graphic at the bottom, this is where it's at. So for the project execution, there's still lots of different
parts of the construction that needs to get permits, that needs to get the funding, that needs to get the insurance. There still needs to be a lot of families that are displaced, relocated. There hasn't been some deals that are concrete and accepted at this part. So there's lots still of negotiations for the project even to move forward for the project execution phase that goes from 2022 to 2025. And then they are hoping and expecting to have the projects in production in 2025. And basically the impact on the drilling of the oil fields is directly impacted by the fact that the project of the pipeline moves forwards or not. So basically all that to say that there's been major delays in other pipeline fights that we've seen. This is really how a project can be abandoned as well, when there's way too much delays, and then the companies that have put funding into it decide to pull off, that they don't get the necessary permits or elements to move forward. So basically this project isn't happening yet. They want to start the construction, but they don't have everything in place to make it happen. So it's definitely a project that can be blocked, and there's really active work that's being done by local communities and NGOs and groups to propose the alternative solutions to this project. So these are the two kind of pieces that move forward at this moment on this. Shall I continue, or has Omar arrived?
No, I'm afraid you've got to continue. You must be like stuck.
Oh, he just came in. Okay, perfect. I'll just stop here so that we can welcome Omar for a second.
Hi, Omar, welcome. Isabel was just wondering if you were going to arrive, and you're here, so it's great to have you.
Hi guys, thanks for being patient. I'm here. Isabel, thanks for holding the fort. Excited to be here, everyone. Please continue, Isabel. I'll just take it up after you're done.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Omar, for welcoming us and for coming and joining us. Thank you, because you have traveled all day. It's great to have you here. Basically, I've just presented a bit the EACOP projects, the different impacts, the different violations, and now I just ended the slides on the different delays that have happened on the initial planning, the timeline of the project and where it's at right now. And I am more than glad to pass it on to you for the next steps of the presentation if you want. And I have my screen that is shared, so I can as well present and share the slides as we go. So I've done, Omar, just like a broad overview of the project. So maybe I'll just present to you really quickly kind of the slides that have been presented. So this one presenting the map of the project, kind of the key elements. This one, which is more on some of the impacts and violations. This one, and the next two slides are more about like the kind of arguments that are put forward for the promotion of the project, and then we can hop on maybe presenting the campaign and the kind of highlights and the wins that we're at. So I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Isabel. Yeah, I mean, amazing. Thanks, guys, for organizing this and for taking the time to join us and to speak on this important campaign. I mean, Isabel has genuinely, because we've spoken about the slides, and I knew that they're going to be covering everything that we needed to cover. But what I would want to add, and definitely I'm seeing messages on the chat box. Hopefully, we'll give people the opportunity to speak on different issues as well, even for those who are supportive of the pipeline. But I mean, what I wanted to like speak as a way of brief is to first mention that, yes, it is true that Africa has more than 620 million people who are energy poor. And what this means is that they either don't have access to electricity or energy, or it's too expensive for them. So they might have access, but they're not able to afford it. And what this means is that then Africa is a market that's available to be utilized and to make sure that we can provide this energy to people. But the question is, what kind of energy then makes the most sense. And for me, and at least most of the people that I've spoken to, energy is supposed to be a means of development, or at least development. What's going to power the development that we need to make sure that Africa is as developed as what we're claiming the West is. And therefore, to me, development will be doing it in a way that is not affecting the people, it's not displacing them, it's not affecting the pristine environment, or at least doing everything possible to do it in a way that is less harmful, or at least, thirdly, we're not continuing to push the climate catastrophe and crisis by proceeding with more fossil fuel engagement. And there are those who are arguing, and it is true, that Africa has historically contributed the least to climate change and climate emissions. I mean, less than 5% of carbon emissions historically are coming from Africa. I mean, every year, less than 1% is coming from Africa. And what this means is, therefore, that there are those who are saying then Africa has not overspent or spent its carbon budget, and therefore they should be given an opportunity to invest in these fossil fuel projects, at least to catch up with the rest of the world. But this does not make sense, because we've seen different countries in Africa, for instance, Nigeria being one of them. It's the biggest oil producer in the continent, but it still also has the most people living under extreme poverty. And what this means is that their exploitation of their oil resources that they're having are not necessarily helping this country to be richer, so to speak. When we talk about, for instance, about the EACOP specifically here, because this is the point of contention, one, this is a project that is going to be exploiting about 200,000 of barrels of oil in a day. But the downside to it, because the argument to deal with energy poverty doesn't make sense, because the pipeline, the only reason why we're having a pipeline is for this oil to be exported to Tanzania and then get it to international markets. And therefore, Uganda and Tanzania, in this case, are really acting like a petrol station for the global north. And therefore, this argument about this oil going to generate energy for the Africans and for Ugandans in this case does not hold any water or even air, because the oil itself is going out of the country to the rest of the world, as Uganda and Tanzania still remain energy poor. There's also the fact that the shareholding of these projects. I mean, if you look at EACOP itself, the shareholding between the companies that own it, that is Total and China National Offshore Oil Company, they own 70% of the pipeline. Uganda and Tanzania are left to divide 30% of it. And what this means is, for the pipeline, Uganda and Tanzania are minority owners of this project. And therefore, to me, this looks less and less as an Ugandan and Tanzanian resource, because majority of the benefits are going to Total and China National Offshore Oil Company. If you look at the two oil fields that are also contentious, which is the Tilenga oil field and the Kingfisher oil field, also through the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, and I'm seeing people here representing that faction, I've seen on their websites themselves mentioning that they only own 15% of the project, and therefore this also becomes a resource that's going out. So increasingly, the argument that we are being colonialists, that we are being racist, we don't want Africa to develop, we are actually doing the exact opposite, because in this case, it's about corporate colonialism, about two companies coming from different parts of the world, which are not African, coming to Uganda and Tanzania, taking over their resources, taking more than 70% of the shares of those resources, having tax benefits, tax holidays for more than 10 years. They're not paying any taxes. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make it as a domestic project that's going to benefit these countries. I mean, this is a lie. This is not helping these countries. And I'm glad to see that people all over the world are seeing this injustice and they're speaking about it. And I mean, if anyone is going to tell you that you should not be involved in this project because you're not African, that's not the case, because Total is not an African company. It's a French company. They own 62% of the pipeline. China National Offshore Oil Company is not an African company. It's a Chinese company. Africans only own minority shareholders of this project. And therefore, for you guys, as people who are based in countries that are taking over and doing all of these injustices, it becomes a really good opportunity for you to speak up and put to task these companies within your jurisdictions, because what they're doing is wrong. What they're doing should not be tolerated, and everyone should be speaking about it. I'm happy to see many employees of these companies are also speaking against these projects, and the company leaders are still pushing on them. But I mean, at the end of the day, we are resilient. We are representing the majority of the people within Africa. We know that this project is wrong. We know that it doesn't benefit us. I know there are a few people who've already been employed, and therefore it becomes about their salary, but they shouldn't be worried. I mean, there's always going to be other opportunities to keep battering their breads, and therefore keep pushing for other opportunities. And they shouldn't be worried, because what we are pushing is an alternative. We're not just saying no to the oil projects, but we're also saying yes to alternatives. And alternatives in this case will be any other energy option that is less harmful to the environment, less harmful to climate, and is not displacing as many people. And you know, at the end of it, the benefits are that they are employing more people and therefore creating more opportunities. I mean, I'll stop here because I'm not so sure how much Isabel has spoken, but I'm hoping that the next session will be about question and answers and some of the ways that people can be involved. And I'm happy to take all of these questions, be pro or against, and so that we can have this dialogue, so to speak. Handing it over back to you, Isabel, or whoever is moderating, so that we can proceed from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. I just wanted to share this last slide before we, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to share this last slide really quickly before we hop off of the presentation, which is a slide that maybe Omar, you want to present. I can present it as well. It's a bit on the achievements of the StopEACOP coalition, kind of, you know, what are the results of a coalition, joining forces, coming together, what can be achieved, you know, and what's kind of where we're at. And then we'll go into a phase of proposing what people that are here can join to help from the UK. Do you want to present, maybe, as you're the StopEACOP coordination of the coalition, do you want to present a bit what has been done by the coalition since its creation?
Yeah, sorry, Isabel, I didn't hear all of that, but I hope you want me to present on this, right? Yeah, yes. Exactly. I mean, yeah, guys, sorry, I'm looking a little bit overexcited and too harsh. But I mean, it's about people's lives, it's about people's livelihoods, it's about our future generations. And therefore, it becomes important that people know that we're not joking about these issues. But, you know, it's not been always gloom. We've actually had a lot of good successes so far. Among them have been, we increasingly, because we know without information, it's not a worthy campaign. So we've been doing a lot of research, investigations, risk briefing, a lot of media writing, coverage, working or sharing information with journalists, and have also done a lot of mobilization actions, campaigns. I mean, all of these have been amazing actions and activities that a lot of you have been involved in one way or another to make sure that our message is heard. We've also shared these researches, risk briefings, investigations, articles, you know, petitions and other things with banks, with insurers, to try and make them see that financing this project, it's an expensive venture. Just EACOP itself, it's a $5 billion project. They will need at least $3 billion for debt financing. And they will need to look at international financial institutions to get this money. So far we've targeted different banks, and about 20 banks have committed to us that they will not be investing or providing project financing for EACOP. And some of these banks are actually, 7 are like Total's 10 largest lenders. So like some of the 10 largest Total's lender, about 7 of them have committed not to be involved. We also know that this project is risky, that there are a lot of things that will go wrong, and therefore they would need insurers to underwrite the project. So we've also, put in a lot of effort and energy, thanks to all colleagues and organizations that have been involved in this, to target insurers and reinsurers to make sure that they know ensuring EACOP is ensuring disaster, is ensuring effects to people. And so far, 8 of the about 15 or so that we've targeted have committed to us that they will not be giving insurance for EACOP. We also know that export credit agencies, which are the public institutions within different countries, have also been known to finance and bankroll fossil fuel projects. So we've also reached out to several of them, and we've had 4 export credit agencies committing to us that they won't be involved. These are in Italy, the UK, United Kingdom, France, and Germany have all ruled out support for EACOP. We're also getting a lot of public outreach on EACOP, not just within Uganda and Tanzania, but also everywhere. I mean, colleagues in UK are pushing EACOP issues. We have colleagues in France and all over the world speaking against EACOP and the associated oil fields because of the many problems that it's going to manifest. And finally, we have also 2 important key cases that have been filed in court to target EACOP. While they're not successful or one of the successes yet, but at least they are also giving us an opportunity to keep challenging the legality of this project. One of those cases has been filed in the French court. It's under a new law, not very new right now, but when we filed it, it was a new law. It's called the Duty of Vigilance Law. And what it does is it does not provide a defense or protection for companies because of their business in other places of the world. So in this case, Total, which is registered in France, whatever actions and activities that they're doing within themselves or through their agents in different countries, and if it brings any human rights infringements or other issues, they could be sued against these issues within the French courts where Total is registered. And the second case, sorry, before I go to the second case, for the French case, it's still being heard. I think the hearing is coming back on 12th of October, if I'm not wrong, where the matter is going to continue for hearing. And hopefully we should be able to have a way forward after that. The second case that I wanted to speak about is one that has been filed at the East African Court of Justice, which is the East African Court that hears matters that are affecting East African countries. By East Africa here, I mean Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and now Democratic Republic of Congo. And that case is solely challenging the environmental impact assessment license that has been issued on EACOP. And why we went to this court is because the pipeline is passing across 2 countries, and we are more hopeful that this court will hear this matter and definitely make a determination, because the courts in Uganda and Tanzania are not so what's the word, impartial, or at least we've had issues where we've had many challenges from before. That's it in terms of the achievements and what we've been able to do so far. I mean, apart from this, we've also had many of you support us in doing email actions, sending emails to these banks, to the insurance companies, signing petitions, more than 1 million people signing and pushing against this project. I mean, it's clear that this project does not have the popular support. People are against it. But I mean, at the end of the day, the companies know that they're going to make a killing. Total just the other day announced that they made almost $6 billion in profit for a quarter, that is for 3 months. They've made 6 billion, when most, if not all, of the countries that they're involved in are continuing to wallow in poverty and a lot of civic disruptions and many other challenges. So it's about time that we put them to task. It's about time that people tell them that it cannot be business as usual, because at the end of the day, it's not just business. It's about people's lives and livelihoods at stake. I'll stop here, and I believe what comes next are a few opportunities for you guys to be involved and take more action. Thank you. I hope we can maybe at some point open it up for questions, just in case there's anything that I haven't spoken about. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Omar. And I'll pass it on now to Andy on how people can get involved in the UK and the key targets that are here.
Hi, everybody. We're going to go on to questions and answers after this. So yeah, there'll definitely be a chance for that. So in the UK, two of the key targets that we know are currently considering getting involved in the project are the insurance industry, mainly through Lloyd's of London. So for those of you who don't know Lloyd's of London, it's one of the biggest insurance marketplaces on the planet. It insures around 40% of the world's global energy projects. And at the moment, there are various insurance companies inside there that are considering insuring this project. And the other sort of key target for the UK is Standard Chartered, which is a major investor as well in lots of fossil fuel projects around the world. I'm going to focus a little bit on Lloyd's of London today, just because we think that's a really key target at the moment. We know that we can win on Lloyd's, which is great, and there's some really great examples that we can draw from that other campaigns have done to target Lloyd's. So the Adani Carmichael mine, the Stop Adani movement has managed to sort of push 44 insurance companies so far to drop insuring that coal mine in Australia. And the Trans Mountain Pipeline has also been pressuring Lloyd's of London and has pushed around 17 insurance companies to drop the project. What that's meant practically for those projects is some of the companies that were involved in the building were unable to get insurance. It's caused delays to the project. It's also massively pushed up the cost for the project. And another key thing is that financiers that lend the money are much less likely to lend the money to projects that don't have insurance, basically. So what have they done to do that? One of the key things that has happened with that targeting has been to have sort of ongoing pressure on these insurance companies. The insurance sector isn't used to having people contacting them all the time to say, you shouldn't be insuring this thing. A lot of people who work in the insurance sector work in it believing they're sort of doing a good thing and sort of helping sort of mitigate risk. Ironically, they don't seem to understand the sort of risks associated with climate change and a lot of the human rights risks associated with these projects as well, unfortunately. But that ongoing pressure has been really successful, and that's not just like contacting the CEOs of these companies. It's actually just contacting and speaking to staff across those organizations, and speaking to staff in a way that isn't confrontational, speaking to them in a way where you're asking them for their opinion, asking them if they think that their company shouldn't be insuring these projects, and asking them to raise it up with their bosses internally if they don't support these projects. And that's been super effective. And it's also like having a little bit happening all the time rather than it being like one big email burst from somebody sends out an email and all their supporters email on one day. Just having people chipping away, doing a little bit. So the Stop Adani movement managed to get most of those insurance companies to rule it out while they were on lockdown in Australia, all the way from Australia. So they had no ability to sort of do protests outside offices. I think that's also worth mentioning that in the UK, we have the opportunity to actually do protests outside offices, and in the breakout rooms later, there'll be a chance for people to think about other tactics that we might be able to use to target these companies. But yeah, literally with one phone call for the Trans Mountain Pipeline, one of the sort of corporate communications people rung us up and said, what can we do to stop our staff being contacted about this project? If we make a public statement saying that we're not going to insure this, will that be enough? Will people stop contacting us then? So it really just shows that this kind of like pressure of sort of ringing, emailing, and trying to have those sort of personal conversations really does work. So I'm going to pass on to Alara now, who's just going to quickly run through like how you can actually get involved in messaging, phoning, and emailing these people. I'm also going to just drop in the chat again now how you can sort of stay in contact with each other. Alara's going to go into that a bit more as well, though. So I'll pass over to Alara now.
Yeah, Andy, thanks for that. Hi, everyone. My name's Alara. I work with Andy at Coal Action Network on insurance campaigning. Sorry if my voice sounds a bit weird. I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. Yeah, so at the moment, we're starting this new tactic or new way of mobilizing on EACOP. Maybe not way of mobilizing, but you know what I mean? Where we're trying to get people to do an action a day. When we say action, we mean a really short, 5 minutes, an email, a phone call, a LinkedIn message, a calendar action. So already small chunks of things you can do at home. And part of the reason behind this kind of action a day rationale, as Andy's been talking about before, is this idea that if we keep, chipping away rather than like a big burst all in one go, that actually is a really effective way, as we've seen with Adani, as we've seen with Trans Mountain. I did some little maths before we started the call based on how many people had registered, because I thought this maybe really illustrated the point. But if everyone who'd registered for the event did one action a day, insurers would be contacted in 1 month 12,028 times. And if each of those actions, saying each of those actions were 5 minutes, that would mean we would spend 42 whole days taking action on EACOP in a month, which is obviously an amazing thing to think about. That we could, put more pressure on these insurers than there is time in the month. And yeah, shows how like if we all come together, even by doing something small that doesn't really take much time out of your day, doesn't change your rota, you don't have to travel for it, we can all kind of come together and do something really great. Also, as Andy was saying, staff are our allies in this. So we're kind of coming with the perspective that, we educate, so they agitate. So when you're contacting staff, it's all about trying to educate them about the project and why it's toxic, why it's really like not a great thing for them to be insuring, both for the planet, for Uganda, for Tanzania, and for even like for their own insurance business, so that they bring it up in meetings and they bring it up, which can have a really great impact. What we're going to be doing basically over the next month is making space so that this action a day is kind of easier for everyone to come together. Like we have a quick point of contact. Andy shared his email and a WhatsApp group link. So these will be 2 spaces that we'll be using so everyone can stay in contact. So when you're doing this action a day, it's not like you stuck at home alone and you don't really know if something goes wrong, or like if you don't know what to do, how do you get in contact about that? So these WhatsApp groups will be a great place for everyone who's involved to, just update each other and be like, oh, I did this today. The staff member I spoke to said XYZ. How funny. And yeah, get in contact with Annie via email if you don't use WhatsApp, because that way we can set up a Google group so everyone can stay in contact via that as well. We'll also be running 3 training sessions next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, and the Tuesday after that, which are on different tactics that you can use. So everyone can kind of gain new skills and expertise on different ways of putting pressure on insurers. So we'll be running one on making effective phone calls. So how you can make the most of a phone call, like what are good lines to start a phone call with so they don't hang up immediately. What are good ways to keep people talking? How do you answer challenging questions? Things like that. The second one will be on calendar jamming. So that's a tactic where you will learn more about it in the training for it, but it's a tactic where you can essentially book meetings into people's calendars as a way of like putting pressure on them, making them aware of the project, clogging up their calendar so they're like, what's this thing that I'm learning all about and hearing about everywhere. And the third one will be on LinkedIn messaging and how to use LinkedIn for digital actions as well. So it's 3 new ways that maybe you're aware of, maybe you've not used before, I would recommend everyone to come along, even if you have used them before, because it can be a great place to ask questions if there are bits about them that you found confusing before. But yeah, it will be a great way for everyone to kind of learn about those things. We'll also be recording those sessions so that if you can't make them, you can still watch them at home and have learn about different things where you're involved. Yeah, if you can't make them as well, that's why the WhatsApp group and the Google group are a really great way of staying in touch, because it means if you can't come to those to ask questions, you can ask them in those spaces as well. A great thing about what we're doing at the moment is the fact that the tide is really turning on these projects. We've seen, as Andy said, in terms of insurance, Adani and TMX, that insurers are really starting to rule out these projects in much bigger numbers. And that's great news for us when we're doing these action a days, because it makes our job of contacting these insurers and contacting staff at insurance companies a lot easier, because when you're phoning up, or messaging, there's a lot more points of reference. You can be like, well, this company ruled out EACOP, or all these companies ruled out Adani, which is a great way of getting them to stay in a conversation, and a great way of showing them that they can say no to EACOP, that they should say no to EACOP, and that that we can get them all to rule out EACOP. So I am going to I'm gonna hand over now to, I think we're doing the Q&A now, but I will hand over to Clara, who is kind of facilitating, to, just in case I'm wrong on that.
No, thanks, Laura, that's great. And, Isabella, stop sharing. I think we're going to stop the recording now as well. Yes, thank you, Omar, Isabel, and Laura, for your presentation. It's time for questions, and we're asking people to use the chat if you've got questions. I know a few of